learners. I greet you all in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. I am teacher Susan Away from Namgongo Secondary and Vocational School, taking you through the geography of East Africa, and basically I'm going to handle the senior 2 class. And what we are going to look at today is the relief regions of East Africa. That is what we are going to look at. Relief regions of East Africa. That is the topic we are going to look at today. But before we look at our topic for today, I want us to go through what I expect by the end of this lesson, what I expect our learners to have captured. 1, by the end of this lesson, I expect us to be able to define the word relief. And then 2, by the end of this lesson, we should be able to explain the different relief regions of East Africa. And then 3, by the end of this lesson, we should be able to draw a sketch map of East Africa. And then 4, to describe the characteristics of the different relief regions of East Africa. So let's begin with one of our objectives, and that is defining the word relief. We shall ask ourselves a question: what is relief? Relief simply means the general appearance of the land, or we can call it the nature of the landscape. Now, when we look at East Africa, it has different appearances. You will find that there are some parts of East Africa which have mountains, and then there are some parts of East Africa which have depressions. There are some parts of East Africa, when we look at East Africa as a general, you will find that there are some areas which have maybe lakes and plateaus. So we want to find out the nature of the landscape of East Africa. But when we look at East Africa, it has basically 5 major relief regions. What are those 5 major relief regions in East Africa? 1, we have what we call the coastal plain. And then 2, we have what we call the eastern plateau. 3, we have what we call the highlands. And then 4, we have what we call the Rift Valley. And then 5, we have what we call Central and the Lake Plateau. So these are the 5 relief regions that describe, that we find in East Africa. Remember, we have defined the word relief as simply the general appearance of the landscape. Now we have a sketch map of East Africa that is showing us the major relief regions of East Africa. We have our sketch map that is showing us the major relief regions of East Africa. And we have looked at that East Africa has 5 major relief regions. So when we will look at that sketch map on our we have something here that we can use to locate those relief regions of East Africa. Just a rough estimate, something rough that we can use. So we have looked at the 5 relief regions of East Africa. We have said we have the coastal plain, the Eastern Plateau. So when we have the coastal plain, where do we find the coastal plain? Remember, this is what we call the Indian Ocean. So where do we find the coastal plain? The coastal plain is simply around this place, near the Indian Ocean, at the coast of East Africa. This is where we find the coastal plain. And then briefly after the coastal plain, we find what we call the Eastern Plateau. So the Eastern Plateau is around this place. Immediately after the Eastern Plateau, the coastal plain, we find the Eastern Plateau. And then after the Eastern Plateau, we have said we have what we call the Rift Valley. So the Rift Valley comes down from around Lake Turkana, comes down to Malawi, and it goes on to the central part of, the western part of East Africa. That is what we call the Rift Valley. And then in between the two arms of the Rift Valley is where we find the central and Lake Plateau. That is where we find the central and Lake Plateau. So you find that the rift from the coastal plain, we come to the Eastern Plateau. From the Eastern Plateau, we get the Rift Valley. From the Rift Valley, we have the Central and Lake Plateau, giving us the 5 major relief regions of East Africa. Now, we have looked at these relief regions on our sketch map. But then we want to look at the characteristics of each relief region. What are the characteristics of these different relief regions? We want to begin with the coastal plain. Now, when we look at the coastal plain is found at the coast of East Africa. It is found at the coast of East Africa. But it stretches right from River Tana in Kenya, and comes downwards to around River Rufiji in Tanzania. Now, what do we need to know about the coastal plain? That the coastal plain is a low-lying area along the East African coast. And then 2, because it is next to the Indian Ocean, it is a low-lying region. And then 2, it is also made up of sedimentary rocks. Why is it made up of sedimentary rocks? It is made up of sedimentary rocks because of river deposition. So you find that the coastal plain is made up of sedimentary rocks because of river deposition. Because we say that the coastal plain stretches from around River Tana, and then it comes downwards to River Rufiji. in Tanzania. So it is made up of sedimentary rocks because of continuous deposition from the river. And then one other thing that we need to know about the coastal plain is that it is dominated by many coastal features. Because we said it is found along the coast, bordered by the Indian Ocean. So you find that it is made up, or it is dominated by many coastal features. What are the examples of these coastal features? We have coastal features like the deltas. We have coastal features like rears. We have coastal features like the coral reefs. Now, these coastal features that we have identified, we shall look into them further when we are looking at coastal geomorphology. But briefly, a delta is a feature which is formed as a result of river deposition. So it is found at the mouth of a river. And then the rear is formed as a result of the rise in the level of water in the sea. And then when we look at the coral reefs are simply skeletons or features that are formed as a result of deposition of skeletons of dead sea animals. And then those sea animals, we call them the polyps. So when the polyps die, their skeletons are deposited along the coast, and they build up and cement to form what we call coral reefs. So coral reefs are simply rocks. And then 3, what other characteristics do we need to know about the coastal plain? It is the most important vegetation that we can find along the coastal plain. We can find the vegetation that we call mangrove swamps. And the mangrove swamps, they are called swamp vegetation, especially in East Africa. But when it comes to the coast, the swamp vegetation is changed to mangrove swamps. So that is all about the coastal plain. Now we can look at another region or another relief region in East Africa. So the other relief region that we want to look at in East Africa is the Eastern Plateau. The Eastern Plateau. What do we need to know about the Eastern Plateau? We have said that the Eastern Plateau borders the coastal plain. In other words, it is found at the eastern part of East Africa. So you find that after the coastal plain, we find the Eastern Plateau. So we say the coastal plain is simply a low-lying land. But as you move away from the coastal plain, the land rises gradually. The land rises gradually. And when the land rises gradually, it gives us a feature that we call the relief region that we call the Eastern Plateau. What else do we need to know about the Eastern Plateau? We also need to know that the Eastern Plateau, it is what? It raises gradually with isolated hills. So that means that the Eastern Plateau has isolated hills. What are these isolated hills called? They are known as inselbergs. So we are saying that the whole Eastern Plateau rises gradually. From the coastal plain, the land rises gradually. And then it is made up of isolated hills that we call inselbergs. Inselbergs are simply hills. Now, what else do we need to know about this? We are saying that this Eastern Plateau also covers many parts of Eastern Kenya. When we look at our map, it covers the greatest part of Eastern Kenya. But the Eastern Plateau, in the eastern part of Kenya, it is referred to as Nyika Plateau. Now, Nyika is a Kiswahili word. It is a Kiswahili word meaning open grassland. I say Nyika is a Kiswahili word meaning open grassland. So that means that the Eastern Plateau is mainly made up of grass. Now this leads us to another thing, that one of the conducive activities that can be carried out in the Eastern Plateau is animal rearing and tourism. So one of the activities that can be carried out in this region is animal rearing and tourism. Why animal rearing and tourism? This area can encourage animal rearing and tourism because it is mainly made up of open grass. And this grass is used for feeding the animals. And besides that, tourism can take place because there are very many national game parks and game reserves in this Eastern Plateau. So briefly, that is what we need to know about the Eastern Plateau. So we move next to our next relief region. What is our next relief region that we need to look at? We want to look at the characteristics of the Rift Valley. But we shall first begin by defining the Rift Valley. What is a Rift Valley? A Rift Valley is simply a depression, a long depression. And this depression is bordered by fault scarps at both ends or both sides. So you'll find that we shall look at the Rift Valley later as we continue with our lesson. You find that the land from some parts of the earth goes down below the other parts of the land. So that depression which is created is what we call a Rift Valley. Now, one thing that we also need to note is that the East African Rift Valley is part of what we call the Great African Rift Valley. And the East African Rift Valley is divided into two branches. We have what we call the African Rift Valley. So the East African Rift Valley, because we are looking at East Africa, it is divided into two branches, or what we can call the arms. What are the two arms of the Rift Valley? We have the eastern branch, or what you can call the arm. And then we have the western branch. So where does the eastern arm begin from? And where does the western arm or branch begin from? Now, the western arm or the eastern arm, let's begin with the eastern arm. The eastern arm or branch of the Rift Valley stretches from around Lake Turkana. From Lake Turkana, comes downwards to central Kenya. It comes downwards to around central Tanzania. And then comes down to around Lake Malawi. That is what we call the eastern branch. It starts from Lake Turkana, comes to central Kenya, comes to central Tanzania, and finally ends. So it ends around Lake Malawi. That is what we call the eastern branch or the eastern arm. And then we have also what we call the western branch. Where does the western branch begin from? Now, with the western branch, it begins from around Lake Malawi, goes through Lake Tanganyika, and then goes to ends around Lake Albert. That is where the western arm begins from. So we shall be able to continue with our work after some time, but for now, for the time being, allow me stop here. Thank you for listening.